What I've got for you today is supposed to be an amazing series of Terran versus Protoss. We're starting off on Ultra Love, but apparently the red player has spawned on the blue side of the map, and that means, yes, the blue player has spawned on the red side of the map. Spawning right here, though, with the blue Protoss pieces from Germany. We're looking at none other than ShoWTimE's main Nexus. His opponent, down in the bottom left from France, we're looking at Clem. Germany going up against France, a tale as old as time. The world champion of StarCraft 2, though, facing off against Europe's, well, for the longest time, I would say Europe's best Protoss, right? I think that was fair for many, many years of StarCraft 2, but these days, MaxSpecs is certainly a step ahead of ShoWTimE, but they play the game quite differently. ShoWTimE in general is that very defensive Protoss player, the man who likes to just absorb every single attack and then eventually overwhelm. I admittedly haven't seen as many of his games as of late. I have been casting a ton of MaxSpecs, so I think I have a good understanding of what the norm in this matchup is, but I haven't really seen ShoWTimE compete in as many events lately, so we'll have to see how he can take on one of the world's greatest players. Clem, I mean, if it wasn't for Serral, I think that Clem would probably be head and shoulders above the rest. Now, yeah, Serral is maybe slightly ahead of him, but really only ever so slightly. In their last bunch of encounters, it does seem like Serral can just barely get the edge, but then last year at the World Championships, of course, Clem had that 5-0 victory in the Grand Finals over Serral, which is quite unheard of. I don't think Serral has ever lost, other than that series, a Grand Finals that spectacularly. Normally, he brings home the entire tournament. So, yeah, Clem, he's a monster. He doesn't really lose Terran versus Protoss. He's incredibly good in every matchup that he plays. And these days, he's even a phenomenal Protoss player too. So his understanding of this matchup, it is, well, obviously from the Terran's perspective, but then also certainly from the Protoss' perspective. He's been playing a lot of Protoss versus Terran lately, and I genuinely think he is, well, after MaxSpecs and then Hero, I think, at least from what I've seen, Clem's PVT, so him playing Protoss, is probably like third best in the world. It's getting pretty silly. So anyways, let's see. Enough hyping up of the Frenchman. Twilight Council opener here for ShoWTimE. Nothing out of the ordinary, and I'm not really expecting any crazy early games here from either of them. Clem is, well, really the standard when it comes to Terran. Like I said, ShoWTimE is a very macro-oriented player who likes to defend, generally speaking, more so than to be the offensive player. And even though there have been a lot of cheeky strategies from the likes of, for example, SOS as of late, I don't think we're going to see any of that from ShoWTimE. Twilight Council. Blink would be the norm, and it is indeed going to be Blink. Makes a lot of sense. We already have ourselves a Cyclone building on the other side of the map. Not quite ideal against a Blink opener, but certainly not bad. It's probably just going to be a single Cyclone, and it can still be really, really handy when it comes to dealing with those early Adepts. The Adepts, though, are not really going across the map, it seems. They've been scouting a little bit, and they are going to join now together. Try and see if maybe they can put in some work, but obviously the lock-on of the Cyclone is incredibly nice, and he actually decides to cancel the Shade, just using the Shade there for scouting, as ShoWTimE walls himself in fully. Interesting. Okay, he was a little concerned about something there. Decides to replace that extra gateway, goes for a shield battery instead. Maybe Clem has been bullying ShoWTimE a bit as of late, or something along those lines. I would not be surprised at all. ShoWTimE certainly did not like the idea. He could have easily killed the Reaper, but this is just to show you how defensive of a player ShoWTimE truly is. He believes that he did not get the kill on the Reaper for free, and that there would be a Cyclone or two, or maybe the Reaper was baiting him in the direction of a bunch of Marauders and Marines waiting. He did not want to commit to the Shade and kill the Reaper just on the off chance that there might be units nearby that will snipe him down. Well, now there are indeed a lot of Terran units on the other side of the map. It's going to be a Siege Tank Marine push. Difficult, though, to pull off on Ultra Love, mostly because there's a little ramp over here that leads to the high ground. Blink is just seconds away from finishing. That shield battery incredibly nice as well. He does need to retarget it. He does it manually eventually, but loses a Stalker already in the process. Energy recharge used on the shield battery itself. And obviously the positioning here, right? It's great for the Terran to, well, be able to snipe down the Robo facility. Aggressive Blink forward there does clean most of this up for now. And I think at this point, it's all about maximizing the damage. Yeah, these Terran units are unlikely to go home. There is another siege tank. Another Stalker does fall too because of the lack of high ground vision. Now there is an observer nearby, so at least he knows that he can't just chase down those handful of Marines. But I also don't believe he's gonna let this Terran army go home. Doesn't really make a lot of sense. You have the faster, more agile unit. Third Nexus in the meantime is building. Reaper in the main base trying to do a bit of forced multitasking. The Nexus building over here on the left side. Reaper decides to continue harassing as many of those probes down as possible. And eventually, the dust will settle. I mean, this is Clem in a nutshell too, right? As defensive as ShoWTimE can be. This is also some of the most aggressive early games you can go for as a Terran player. Landing the Vikings, trying his best to just squeeze as much juice out of this as possible. Now, as the dust has now truly settled, has this been worthwhile for Clem? It's not that ShoWTimE really lost anything critical, right? He is, as a matter of fact, now ready to go on the other side of the map. If he can snipe this tech lab, that would be absolutely massive. The tech lab is currently researching Stimpack. He doesn't really know exactly how many Terran units there are, and he's not gonna have enough. He did decide to blink into the main base. Can always blink out if I get in right over there. Well, a bit of a sloppy bit of micro. I feel like at least, like, out of the total of 10 Stalkers that have gone down, I think like 3 or 4 of them could have been prevented. Maybe I have been watching too many of those mech specs and Clem, or mech specs and hero games rather, and then also a little bit of Clem's Protoss. The Stalker micro at some point, maybe you just grow accustomed to it, but it is of course very tricky to keep these units alive, despite their mobility. They are quite flimsy against those, well, siege tanks in particular. Let's see though. A Robo Bay right now on the back of this. We have the classic trio of Terran upgrades. So it's Stimpack, combat shields, plus 1 infantry weapons. They're going to finish up roughly around the same time, which, well, combat shields a little bit later. Clem, though, only just now finishing up the 3rd command center. So he doesn't really have a ton of economy. He has already been over-making SCVs on the basis that he's got right now. So he will be transferring some of those down to, I would imagine, over here when the command center flies on over in that direction in a moment. Yep. He will go for the transfer, but simultaneously he's also going for an attack. No Colossus out just yet. The first one is about halfway done, a little less. There is an Immortal, and there is, more importantly, also Charge. There's no way he's going to be able to build a Nexus over here right now, though. Not a chance, ShoWTimE. He was thinking about it. It's good that the Nexus did not get planted down yet. Maybe aim for one in the top left? Yeah, he's thinking about that too, but it might just be better to do another warp-in of Zealots. He really wants to build over here, but there's no way, man. Clem is going to set up shop over here if he gets the opportunity. Orbital Command coming up on that new command center that just finished. Ranged is now coming up too here for the Colossus. Second Colossus getting chronoed out. Plus 1 ground attacks also finishing here for ShoWTimE, who's just dancing around these Terran units. Both players trying their very best. This observer has been absolutely, well, it's dead now, but it has been absolutely worth it, because ShoWTimE has been using it continuously, also with the previous attack, to see exactly what the Terran army was up to. Clem did not quite recognize that that was the case. This is, of course, a Colossus without its ranged research, so you gotta be careful. It needs to step quite far forward. A Nexus did begin, but it's all the way in the top left-hand corner, and this is generally not the position that Protoss players like. It just is quite a bit of distance that you have to cover in between the 3rd and the 4th base now, and obviously, with the Terran expanding in this direction too, at some point, you are, destined to become neighbors, and the attack for Terran is just so much quicker than if it would be in another spot. Either way, it is certainly playable. Ooh! We have some hallucinated probes going out, together with a real probe. That is cheeky. When you hallucinate worker units in StarCraft 2, you only, well, you don't just get 1, you get 4 of them. If you hallucinate Zealots, you get 2. So he's trying to scout out whatever is going on. I love this. We rarely see it, but it seems like a no-brainer whenever we do see them coming out, because you can see the entire map. It's just a bit of energy. With the energy recharge ability on the Nexus, you can get that, well, energy onto the sentries pretty easily. It's so strong. I love it. Wouldn't be surprised if we're gonna see it a lot more in the future. Not really something, though, we've seen in the first 15 years of StarCraft 2. Maybe in the second 15 years. How about that? Well, that was a nice bait there. Those Protoss units trying to lure the Marines down to the low ground, although that's a bit sloppy. Prism goes down. No High Templar or anything like that available yet. Instead, ShoWTimE decides to go from Colossi into the Disruptors, trying to bait those Vikings within range of now the Stalkers on the low ground, too. Some good force fields once again. There are a bunch of ghosts in the mix, and we already see some of the EMPs landing on top of all those Protoss units. Previously, it was ShoWTimE defending a ramp on the other side of the map. Now it's Clem, well, pulling it off successfully at home. In the meantime, though, a 5th Nexus is already building. There is a 4th command center about to finish up, but that is a pretty quick 5th. Clem going for his good old medevac drop, and he will indeed stumble upon this new Nexus. Should be able to force the cancel on it if he decides to target it down. New Prism just has spawned, no cancel. So that's like 400, 600 minerals or so down the drain, including, ooh, the pylons. Now maybe the Marines inside of the plane are going to have a difficult time getting home. One of them already fell, one of the medevacs that is. Jimmy, not going to live for much longer either. Falls to the bottom of Ultra Love, whatever's going on here. Probes get targeted down to at the very least squeeze a little bit more juice out of this Terran army. But ultimately, it's a lot of scouting and then mostly the killing here of the Nexus. 11 workers can be remade in a heartbeat at this rate in the game, or at this stage in the game. So, Dark Shrine, +1 air, 2nd starport. We are building up a really nice macro game. So far, Clem tried to bully his way to a victory. That's what he tends to do against a lot of Protoss players. It is a major skill check. ShoWTimE, though, defended it all. Maybe not in the cleanest manner, but he got it done. And he found himself with a solid economy. I think he saw the little shimmer there of the Dark Templar. Either way, missile turret coming up. That is, of course, a detector. The Dark Templar being a cloaked unit. And then the planetary fortress right next to it, together with a Widow Mine. I mean, this is going to be excellent at cleaning up any of those pushes from the Protoss player, be it Zealots or Dark Templar. We have some sensor towers also set up. Clem is ready to go and play incredibly defensively. It's a lot of Zealots in this army, though, for Protoss. 30 Zealots in total. He needs to try and get some sort of value. My god. I don't know if this is it, though. That was a lot of Protoss units going down for, like, I don't know, a depot or two. Certainly not worthwhile, but you do need to trade those units out for something a bit better at some point. Clem, though, smells blood in the water immediately. Disruptor coming in clutch, forcing that entire Terran army to back up. Vikings, in the meantime, having a grand old time. Stalkers finally turned their weapons, but that is a bit late, and I believe we are going to see another Colossus die. Yep. Great sequence of events right there for the French Terran player. With the reinforcing Protoss units coming in, though, he might just be able to push this away, especially since most of those Terran units are quite overstimped. Not a lot of medevacs, actually. We've only got 4 medevacs in total, actually. That's not a whole lot. Okay, so Colossus production once more resumes. Viking production also has begun, but what Clem really wants at this moment in the game is these bad boys. Fusion core is done. First up, we're gonna go for the medevac energy improvement. Considering the amount of medevacs, it's a really nice thing to have. So this increases the regeneration of the medevac's energy. And then behind it, this makes a lot of sense, advanced ballistics is coming up. So that is gonna be for these libs. They're gonna get some additional range on their anti-ground mode. And ultimately, this is not a Protoss army that has any flying units in it. ShoWTimE could go into Tempest here if he wanted to. Right now might just be the time to go into Tempest, but if he chooses not to, Liberators are always going to be the bane of this game. If more libs come out, they become harder and harder to break, because ShoWTimE, if he doesn't go for Skytles, he will really only have a bunch of Stalkers available to try and get the job done. In the meantime, Clem using those planetaries and using those Liberators already, actually, despite the fact that he's only got 3, to secure this base. He's making new command centers down south. Zealot and Dark Templar. I mean, they're running around the map, but they're not able to achieve all too much. Clem doing a great job switching from hyper-aggression into, well, can we call it hyper-defense? I guess so. Once upon a time, the Frenchman was not that great at playing defensive StarCraft 2. These days, phenomenal. Can't really fault them here anywhere. The Dark Templar, though, have snuck in. This is a real expensive run by, though, for the Protoss. Because Dark Templar, I mean, you can micro them like Zealots, but they're a hell of a lot more expensive than that. He decides to at least save 3 of them, but that was still not quite worthwhile. Maybe it's gonna force the Terran here to build up a bunch of additional defense inside of the natural. I honestly don't think we're gonna see more Dark Templar in that direction, but maybe. So the problem is, right, the Liberators are going to continuously be built. And you can snipe them with Stalkers, but there is a certain moment when the Libs just counter everything on the ground. Obviously, they can't possibly cover every position, and in general, the Protoss army is quite mobile. But this is that dicey moment. Ooh, I love the fact that half of the Terran units are waiting on the high ground. Disruptors are getting sniped already. Excellent fight here again for Clem. ShoWTimE might be known as Demauer, but Clem, I don't know what the French word for wall is, but Clem is showing us that he is also perfectly capable of playing that style. New Nexus building. We're gonna go into a full split map at this rate. New command centers coming up. The Dutch word for wall is muur. M-U-U-R. Sadly for me, I suck at defensive play, so I guess I will never get the nickname. Sounds like a French word to me, though. Anyways, Colossi, we're trying to see if they can go into that base. This is a risky engagement here for ShoWTimE, man. He's diving real deep. Those Colossi really should have been retargeted onto the army. Instead, they were awkwardly hitting a command center, which is not where they are good at all. And that is the type of fight that you really can't afford here as Protoss. He lost a ton of troops there, didn't even kill the command center, and Clem is going to be able to, well, punch his way right now to this top left-hand base. This was, of course, the 4th Nexus for ShoWTimE. He's going to have to give it up. Sends a bunch of the probes home. At least they will have a new mineral line to mine from, but Dark Templar actually once more tried to go into the natural there. Blinking away. He actually came back for more and did finish up the command center in that position. Terran army's chasing him down. Needs to be careful, though, because this is still a Protoss army that packs a punch. With the amount of gateways here, 16 gates. Yeah, ShoWTimE can very rapidly reinforce. And now suddenly, what was previously a Terran army that was punching way above its weight class, and what was previously a Protoss player overextending, this is now an overextension here for Clem. He has to sneak away. Blink is available. I would love to have seen those Stalkers go to the left there, but not quite the case. Liberator production now 6 at a time. Okay. So far, ShoWTimE has been managing the Libs. It is going to get progressively harder, though. With, like, triple starport producing a bunch of those guys at a time. I mean, Clem is going to be able to remax with, with Mass Liberator. Okay, maybe don't max out with Liberators. But it certainly is a unit that Stalkers are capable of killing, but it's not the preferable choice. Sometimes we see Protoss players still going into Skytals right now, but I don't believe, with the amount of gateways that we have, that that will be the weapon of choice. Hello. Low Colossus, you should join the rest of the army. Stalkers, in the meantime, have found a command center over here. This would result, by the way, in a full split map, and he is going to be able to snipe that CC. Honestly, good gaming here, though, so far by ShoWTimE. Even though I haven't seen him play all too much. I mean, that could just be that I haven't seen his games, right? There's always a lot of tournaments going on, but it's very clear to me that ShoWTimE has not been slacking off. I've always kind of had the vibe that ShoWTimE never has slacked off in, like, however long he's been competing for. It's been a long time. He's always strong. Now the Liberator count, though, is high. We have 12 Liberators. Clem is going to try and provide a little bit of freedom to this Protoss army. Why won't you just be free? Urgh. Don't you just hate it when they resist freedom? God, it's the worst. Well, at least Liberators, they cannot hit structures. They can do that in co-op, but ShoWTimE is funneled away from his own bases. This is a little bit awkward. Yeah, now the Liberators, they have been successfully zoning those units. Maybe, though, he can contain the entirety of these Protoss units in the bottom right-hand corner at this rate. Look at them. Like a bunch of sheep, they're being herded by Libs. He has to go through the zones of liberation back up to the relative safety of the Nexus. But that was a sequence, again, that was phenomenal for Clem. ShoWTimE is capable of quickly remaxing, so his army supply doesn't really dip. But this is not a Protoss army. I mean, this is an early game army for Protoss, really. This is not the type of army that can easily fight Liberators by any stretch of the imagination. Still, though, it's much more mobile than those Liberators, so he's going to try and come around the side again. But there's only like 11 Stalkers here. There's as many Liberators as there are Stalkers. Maybe if he can hit a lucky strike with one of those Disruptor Novas, he can actually pull it off, but Clem seems to be in control for pretty much the entirety of that fight. He decides to disable the Fog of War for a little bit, scans wherever he can, secures the base in the bottom right once more. ShoWTimE in the meantime, though, decides to steal one of the bases that is normally considered to be the TERRAN'S. I think it's actually within range there of the sensor tower, yeah. Okay, good snipes there. That was 2 Libs going down. New ones, though, coming up. In the meantime, there is a Protoss army that will get recalled over here. Colossus on the wrong side of the recall. You don't really get to control that as a Protoss player, where the units appear. Well, technically you do, but it's really difficult to pull off. Especially when you're in a fast-paced game like this. And while ShoWTimE is still maxed out, I feel like none of those fights are going his way. Still, there have been some successful Dark Templar and Zealot run-bys. I think I missed one over here just now. 20 SCVs in total have died in this game, so that's really nothing all too insane. Clem never really making that many workers in the first place. Those Libs, by the way, not even maxed out yet. +3 air attacks coming up right now. An absolute bloodbath, though, in game number 1. Both players playing a very fast game. Look at that. 470 or 471 average actions per minute there for Protoss. 510 for Clem. Do we do a little bit of first-person view? This is what Clem was looking at whilst playing this game. Perfect scan there on top of that Protoss army. Tries to secure this position once again. You can see what he's got selected in the meantime in the bottom right-hand corner, which is where the majority of those actions will be displayed. As he kills the Nexus and secures another kill on that base in the top left, he's now unsieging the defensive Liberators, and he is ready to send them across the map. Switch to a little bit of ShoWTimE's vision. He's balling his units in one big clump. Not easily pulled off, especially when the Vikings are chasing it down. Okay, let me take control of the camera again. Sometimes it's easily forgotten how claustrophobic the game can kind of feel. I always zoom out when I'm casting these big battles, but the players do not have this luxury. ShoWTimE, though, does get what is, I think, the best engagement he could ever get. Decides to warp in Stalkers in the middle of the liberation zones. He didn't have anywhere to go, but Clem is on the run with the rest of his army. I think that was about the best fight ShoWTimE could ever take. Clem has to retreat all the way back home, restart some of those expensive units, but maybe the floodgates have been opened now. Still, though, his siege tank setup over here is going to be nice. There are a lot of planetaries up, too. I wonder if ShoWTimE could have actually punched a little bit deeper. In the meantime, he is taking that base that was previously mined by the Terran in the far bottom right-hand corner of the map. This planetary fortress has been his Achilles heel the entire time, right? It's been incredibly frustrating to deal with. Mass repair is gonna try and keep it alive. In the meantime, the Stalkers are bleeding out to the reinforcing Marines and Marauders. Planetary does fall. Colossi turn their weapons once more onto those biological units. Liberator has joined in the fray, and I think it is going to be enough to force some of those Protoss troops back home. Ultimately, that fight there was A-okay for Clem. A difficult engagement to read for both of the players for sure, but if you look at the supply count, I think it reflects the full story. Clem has been keeping tabs on every single one of those outer bases of the Protoss, and he knows that right now is the time to strike. Look at that. Woo! An absolute nosedive. This is what happens when you confidently fight on top of a planetary fortress that is getting mass repaired, but then can't kill it within 2 seconds. Painful engagement there for ShoWTimE, especially since it seemed to me that he was actually doing a really good job. I wonder if he could have continued going here. Like, he backed up against a single siege tank and then decided to run his entire army into a single planetary that was getting mass repaired. I think the siege tank could have been killed pretty easily, and maybe he would have been able to actually drive a wedge in between all of those Terran structures. Either way, now Clem is on the hunt. He doesn't yet know, I don't think, about the base in the far bottom right. If he knew, he could send... No, he has seen it. Okay, he's actually got a Marine on the watchtower. He could send units over here, and he does send units over here. Only a handful of troops, though, as he is still using the majority of his army to go after another Nexus. Killed one over here. He's going to kill this one over here. And while the reinforcing units for ShoWTimE have, I think, teleported, they probably recalled here, yeah, towards the far bottom right. These troops now have nowhere left to go. ShoWTimE, though, needs to keep that base alive because it's effectively his only income. At this point, he can juggle all he likes, and he is going to try his very best, but the numbers no longer lie. Brilliant game here by Clem in the end. He had to fight for this. But look at the Liberators, man. They're being used right now for their anti-air. They're garbage at that, but they can still get the job done. GG gets called. It's Clem who obtains the victory in the first match of the series. So apparently, my scoreboard said best of 1. Turns out that was a lie. This is a best of 3 series. Did I mention that? I don't know if I remember. I don't remember whether or not I mentioned that this is a best of 3 series. Either way, there's another game. And we find ourselves on Amygdala. Or as some players call it, Amygdala. Yeah. They probably have a underdeveloped amygdala. Anyway, it's going to be Stalker into a good old sentry. Reaper wants to go up to the high ground and can't. So funny, man. He doesn't know why he can't. Normally, he can always jump up here, but it's not possible. He can't even test. He doesn't know, but he can't go up there. Well, the only reasoning is that there is something blocking the pathing. Still, though, I think he saw the hallucinated Phoenix. So he knows that this is Stalker into Sentry. It will be a good old Twilight Council once again. A quick starport here for Clem. Trying his very best. To be aggressive again, huh? In the previous matches, early game aggression didn't really achieve all too much. And that was off of the back of some reasonably sloppy Blink Stalker micro troop. Like, I mean, every time I say that, there's always somebody who gets upset at me, but honestly, yeah, you can squeeze, technically speaking, an infinite amount of Stalker juice out of these units. If you throw a Stalker in a blender, you get an infinity smoothie, man. You can get so much value out of these, but you do have to obviously micro them very, very delicately. And ultimately, I think we saw like 10 of them die by like minute 7, which was a bit much. Hard to prevent, but certainly doable. Robo facility on the back of this as well. How many gateways do we have? Just the 3 of them. 3 is the norm. Sometimes we see Protoss players trying to take a 3rd Nexus with only 2. This does mean, of course, that the 3rd Nexus is ever so slightly later. But it doesn't really matter all too much. ShoWTimE is going to plant down a pylon. Clem is trying to see if he can possibly scout this. Does not see what's going on. Hallucination once more goes across the map. Single Banshee into cloaking. So that always... It's a single Banshee into cloaking and then into a second starport unit. But the starport unit is a Raven. Ravens, of course, do not benefit from that cloaking research. Either way, Clem is going to try and see if he can potentially get some work done. This is a really expensive Banshee, though, when you think about it. And there is an observer just about to pop. Blink is already done. So this should be an easy kill. Yeah, pushes it away. Only 2 workers go down. That is certainly not worth the research there and then the production as well of the Banshee. There was only a couple of Stalkers, though, at home. I think 3 of them. Yeah. 3 is usually good. There are a bunch of other units on the other side of the map. But considering there is a 3rd Nexus, ShoWTimE doesn't really need to commit. Although he can certainly try. That observer, though, is needed for high ground vision on the other side of the map if he wants to get into the main base. And Clem is already set up over there, too, so... Not going to be able to achieve anything. Robo Bay. The Holy Trinity of Terran upgrades is back again. Stimpak combat shields +1 infantry weapons. And this is that lull in this matchup, where both players basically are sitting waiting for their stuff to actually happen. It's always a bit of a passive moment in the middle of a game of Terran versus Protoss. Protoss tries to go into higher tech, be it High Templar with Storm, or be it Colossi, like what we see in this particular instance. Terran is waiting for all of their upgrades to finish up. So what we do is we just have a bit of a gentleman's agreement. This is the middle of the game, 3 minutes no rush. It's a little bit different than the Command and Conquer, like 20 minutes no rush or whatever. This is we're not gonna attack each other for about 2 minutes in the middle of a game. Getting the Raven, though, would be a great restart of the fighting. Blink. Nice blink. Charge is already done. I mean, Clem is a very ambitious siege job. So there are some really great positionings on this map. Good snipe there on the Cyclone. There are some great positions on the map for siege tanks in particular. And ShoWTimE is trying to slow down the advancement here of this Terran army to the best of his abilities with those Stalkers. He knows that there are going to be some really nasty spots. So the longer he can delay this, the better. There is a Raven in the mix, and the Raven, of course, will see if there's any observers nearby. Not easy for ShoWTimE to really move forward and see if the siege tanks are sieged. Oh, tried to get that. Doesn't quite happen. Zealot is going to defend against this Nexus that Clem just scouted out as well. The clock is ticking, though. Colossus are going to get their ranged research in a moment. There's already one of them done. I think that actually ShoWTimE can take this army down with relative ease. Yeah, Clem has decided to reconsider that fight altogether as he loads up 3 medevacs full of units to try and go after this base over here on the right side. But it looks to me like ShoWTimE is anticipating this exact move as he has repositioned his army in the exact same position. Like clockwork here by ShoWTimE. Very nicely done. Means, of course, that the third base is now technically vulnerable. But Clem doesn't know that. Yeah, he decides to go home. Great movement here by ShoWTimE. Reading his opponent like a book. Clem does this sort of thing every single time. When he delays that push up north, he goes for the drop down south. But knowing and anticipating are two very different things. And honestly, this is a real opportunity for ShoWTimE to now go for an attack. He doesn't yet have a prism, which is a little bit of a shame. It's coming up. He can use this new Nexus now as a warp-in location, though, to get the reinforcements in reasonably quick. There are 2 Vikings out. 2 Vikings, though, are no match for 13 Stalkers. And those Colossi are going to be an incredibly difficult unit for the Protoss, or for the Terran player, rather, to snipe. He decides to back up, though, against the Raven's auto turrets. A little bit risky. The Vikings have now returned here. 2 more are coming up out of the starport in just a moment. Prism should also be nearby. Couple of reinforcing units. Good micro here by Clem, trying to split up the units as much as he can and mitigate that splash. 69 workers here in total for ShoWTimE. And apparently that is all he needs in his life. Ghost Academy. Coming up now that the third base is fully saturated. But this is in the heat of the battle. Oh, the one cloaked Banshee. The one cloaked Banshee. Are you kidding me? The one cloaked Banshee is ultimately forcing this entire Protoss army to go home. He does have an observer, but I think it was still positioned up north to try and deal with the Banshee if it decided to go with the flyby. That's a crazy moment for that Banshee. That Banshee did nothing the entire game long. Well, I think it killed 2 probes. Now it's single-handedly responsible for pushing this Protoss army back, but it's not going to be back for long. And indeed, ShoWTimE is ready to go for another push. Cleans up the Widow Mines quite nicely, at least the first 2 of them. Now suddenly, though, this army here for Terran's kind of clumped up together. I would love to see the Colossi getting re-microed in the middle of that bio clump. Either way, the SCVs are already dying. Another warp-in of units here for ShoWTimE. This choke point, this is the exact mirrored location on the other side of the map that Clem was trying to hit. This choke point is always dangerous on Amygdala. And now suddenly, the Colossi are getting extreme value. Command Center gets lifted up too. 14 SCVs have died. In the meantime, additional upgrades have begun, but I think if the Colossi are microed like this, yeah, ShoWTimE can probably punch through everything that Terran has. That 4th command center is also building in this location, and it is certainly not going to finish up. Nice counsel there by Clem to try and at the very least get some of his resources back. But the real loss, of course, is the time investment. New SCVs have arrived over at this base because he needs this mineral line. The Colossus juggling here is looking really solid. A mass repair on an orbital command does not hit quite as hard, but even though that Viking gets the final hit on the Prism, the floodgates are too far open, and ShoWTimE gets a point on the board. Next up, Persephone. Final game in this best-of-3 series. Apparently, ShoWTimE was quite fond of the way that the Sentry gave him all the information at the beginning of the previous game. So now we're not even going to go for an Adept first, or 2. We're not even going to go for a Stalker first. We're going straight into a Sentry. So this is a fast expansion for Protoss together with a Sentry. It's a little dangerous because your total firepower is, this. I mean, not to like, you know, trash talk the Sentry or whatever, but doesn't deal a whole lot of damage. Luckily for him in this particular instance, I mean, you can tell that Clem, since this is the final game of a series, he does not want to, well, go down with a loss. He is already going for a blind bunker and a fast expo of his own as well. So we've got some nice eco-focused start here for both of the players. And would you look at that, ShoWTimE going into a Stargate build this time around. I mean, Stargate has always been viable. It's just kind of difficult. Most of the time, there's going to be Phoenixes into Colossi. Could also be Phoenixes into Charge Slots. Could also be Phoenixes into Charge Slots into Storm. Could also be Oracles. So, I'm assuming it'll be the first option though. Yeah, Phoenixes into Colossi. Most likely will be the weapon of choice. What Terran decides to go for remains to be seen, but a Cyclone is always a nice start. And one of the reasons why Oracles are not that popular in this particular matchup. Here we go, this is the highway. Look at Clem over here, dude. Dun 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 dun. Liquid Clem. Dun, dun. No? Alright. Anyways. One of my favorite Formula 1 drivers. Clement Desplange? I think that's it. Actually, quite a few French Formula 1 drivers as it is. Would have been quite the career switch, though. Dude, that would be sick. StarCraft 2 pro gamer turned Formula 1 driver. I mean, these guys do have insane reaction speeds. Wouldn't be surprised if they have faster reaction speeds in some circumstances than the F1 drivers. I've also learned over the years, though, that many pro gamers have very specific areas of skill. Like, they have very dedicated knowledge in very specific areas. Meaning that for some other things, where you would imagine they would be able to know the basics, no. I would give you examples, but that would be mean. I'll stop right there. Hey, this is going to be Phoenixes into a Twilight Council. I've once seen a pro gamer point to the country of Poland, which is where we were, on a map. I'm not going to tell you who it was, but they certainly did not point at Poland. Anyway, here we go again. Stimpack +1, combat shields. Charge together with +1. So no Colossus follow-up. It is going to be Phoenixes into a good old charge slot army. And this is nice because you go from a micro-heavy army into an army that you just sort of A-move. Highly recommended. Highly recommended, dude. Templar Archives, though, does make the fight slightly more difficult, but you can, of course, follow this up as well with Archons, which means that you can still just continue A-moving. Zealots and Archons work together wonderfully. Little tiny bit of damage. Not really achieving too much, though. That's Cyclone. Being a thorn in his side. Now the upgrades, though, for Terran are finishing up. And Clem, well, he's got a mighty fine army. He's decided to effectively go for a fully committed 2-base push. He doesn't have a third CC until, well, it's starting up right now. He doesn't really have a lot of additional SCVs. He could even pull the boys. Although with a third command center, that would be a little bit funky. He needs to do something, though, because at this rate, well, yeah, he might have the bigger army. But obviously, the income advantage is now heavily in favor of our German Protoss. And this is one of the downsides when you play against Phoenixes, right? Like, you can move out with your entire army, but the Phoenixes can kill a bunch of your workers and then still be home in time for defense, too. They're very quick. ShoWTimE is scouting out the 3 o'clock position. Jimmy, oh my god, with Stimpack, look at him. Look at him run! Fastest man in the West. Well, he will know that there is at the very least no 4th Nexus yet in this position, but I think ShoWTimE is fine with triple expansion for now. Okay. The Marines are stimming around, and what Clem really is looking for here is whether or not there is a 4th Nexus. Since there is no 4th Nexus yet, pushing across the map is extremely risky. He knows that Protoss has been sitting on 3 bases for at least a while, and I think it's already a bit late for a 2-base attack. He's going to try, though. He's been making a lot of stuff. 3rd CC is now done, but this feels like a bit of a anti-timing now for Clem. I mean, what does he really have in addition to what he had a minute or so ago? He decides to commit, though, regardless. There is no storm available, but there are... Ooh, I love the Widow Mines! All of the Widow Mines get lifted! Another one does indeed not go off. There is one in the middle of this Terran army. Zealots, in the meantime, sliced up a ton of those troops, but good control right there on those Phoenixes, keeping a lot of those very, very important Zealots alive for a lot longer. Ultimately, it was 15 Zealots dying. But at least that Protoss army managed to push away that of the Terran. And considering the economical advantage, ShoWTimE doesn't really mind. Then again, though, he hasn't really been producing a lot of probes. He is still playing Gateway Man, right? And Gateway Man off of 64 workers is not quite enough. Phoenixes right now, though, swoop in, get a bunch of the Marauders. I don't mind it. Okay, late splitty there against that mine. But now the numbers here are just so freaking nice for the Protoss player. More lifts. Man, these Widow Mines are just not able to start any engagement. Big warp in over here, too. Okay. He forces the Terran to evacuate the 3rd base. Another Phoenix is being produced. Normally, you kind of stop the Phoenix production at some point, but they've been putting in a lot of work. Dude, they have been lifting up. I think about a dozen mines at this point in time. That bunker from the early game goes down as well. Nice Archon juggling. Zealots swoop around the site to start working on some of the SCVs. 18 of those bad boys have already died, and it's only the beginning at this rate. I think Clem just lost. Wow. Going into this series, I honestly would have predicted a 2-0 win for Clem. Brilliant set of games here by ShoWTimE, showing a wide variety in strategies. He knew exactly how to take on that Terran army. He successfully delayed it by a good half minute or so. And, well, he wiped the floor. GG.